The reading is from Luke 23, 26 to 49. As they led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the barren women, the wombs that never bore and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if men do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be crucified. When they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified him, along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour, for the sun stopped shining, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he had said this, he breathed his last. The centurion, seeing what had happened, praised God and said, "Surely this was a righteous man." When all the people who had gathered to witness this sight saw what took place, they beat their breasts and went away. But all those who knew him, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. The sound of crying. Let us now turn to a sound that seems to fit so appropriately with the emotions of the Passion and with the word passion itself. It is a sound of deep passion, the sound of crying. Let us begin with the people following Jesus to the place of crucifixion. So often the climb to Calvary is portrayed as Jesus on his own, perhaps with Simon of Cyrene carrying the cross, being followed by a small group of faithful supporters. But Jesus wasn't the only one due for execution that afternoon. From the earliest traditions, we are told that there were 2 others with him. They too would have had their families and friends going along to witness the last sad moments of the person they knew. So it is not just the followers of Jesus who would have been grief-stricken, but a great crowd of mourners. With heavy hearts, they would have made a sad procession. And of course, it would have been the most natural thing for all parts of that crowd to give vent to their feelings. There would have been few dry eyes. Tears would have been running down their cheeks. Tears are very important for us. I don't mean the tears that flow across our eyes all day to keep them safe and moist, though of course those are essential to prevent damage and avoid discomfort. I'm thinking more of the tears we cry at times of profound emotion. There was a television program some years ago that investigated the value of tears. Apparently, tears of emotion have a different chemical composition to the normal tears that flow when you are facing the wind or when there is dust in your eye. The researchers for this program had made volunteers sit through a particularly evocative tearjerker of a movie. As they cried their way through the film, their tears were collected for analysis. Apparently, it seems that tears of emotion are actually the body's way of getting rid of a particular protein, and the researchers thus argued that in this way, tears really are therapeutic. They do positive good and help to reduce stress. For the involved spectators of the crucifixion, the tears would have been helping them in some small way to cope with the horror of the situation. And there are times when we need that same therapy. At times of heightened emotion, we need to be able to cry. But what makes us cry? All sorts of different things can trigger that response. We don't all respond in the same way, so while crying can help us, it is not necessarily a sign of how distressed we are. But as we look to Jesus, the Gospel contains only 2 accounts of Jesus weeping, and we see in them a desire to communicate a depth of emotion that transcended the spoken word. One occasion was when his friend Lazarus died. He quite clearly felt the sense of loss we all experience at the death of someone close to us. In his sorrow, words could only say so much, and when he was at a loss for words, just like us, Jesus wept. Those who were nearby were prompted to say, "See how dearly he loved him." In much the same way, the woman who anointed Jesus' feet in the house of Simon the Pharisee found that words weren't enough, and so she added her tears to the costly perfume with which she anointed Jesus, while using her hair to wipe his feet. A powerful image. The other time when Jesus is reported as weeping was when he looked out over Jerusalem and mourned their stubborn refusal to listen to the gospel. For he could see that such an attitude would lead to their destruction and the destruction of innocence in the city as well. The depth of his sadness and broken heart could be communicated in no other way. But maybe the crucifixion itself also brought tears to Jesus. One can only imagine his cry of lament, my God, why have you forsaken me?" How could that statement not also have been watered with tears? Words could only say so much in that moment of anguish and separation. And it must have been the same for those who had gathered at the foot of the cross. Which of them would have been able to put their feelings into words? All they could do was cry. In the quiet now, let us offer to God those moments of tearfulness we have known, the times when our sorrow has been for ourselves, the time when it has been for others we love. Let us pray that our tears may help to bring us healing, and let us acknowledge that words can only take us so far. And in silence, let us remember the great cost at which our salvation has been bought.